Everyone says Messi was just born a genius. That's not true. He was small, he was shy, he barely spoke to his own teammates. So he built something nobody could see. Piece by piece, in silence. A system. And that system is what made him unstoppable. Not talent, not luck. A routine so exact, so obsessive, that he followed it before every single major match of his career, without exception. This is the story of how a quiet boy built an unbreakable machine around himself. To understand the routine, you have to understand the boy first. Messi was never the loudest player on the pitch. As a child in Rosario, he was small for his age, so small that doctors worried he wouldn't grow at all. He didn't talk much, he let the ball do the talking. But something else was happening underneath that silence. While other kids relied on instinct alone, Messi was quietly building habits. Small ones, repeated ones, the kind nobody notices until years later. Because here's the part people miss. Greatness is rarely one explosive moment. It's usually 1,000 invisible repetitions nobody was watching. By the time Messi reached Barcelona's academy, the pattern was already forming. He wasn't the strongest, he wasn't the tallest, but he was the most consistent. In training, in preparation, in the tiny details everyone else considered unimportant. And that's where the ritual began. The right boot always goes on first, every time. Not the left. Never the left. It sounds like superstition. But for Messi, it wasn't really about luck, it was about control. In a sport built on chaos, bouncing balls, unpredictable opponents, screaming crowds, this was one small piece of the world he could command completely. Before every major match, the sequence never changed. The same stretches, the same warm-up touches on the ball, the same walk onto the pitch. Teammates have described it as almost robotic, not because Messi lacked emotion, but because he'd removed all the guesswork. While other players were burning nervous energy, Messi's body was moving through a pattern it had already memorized 10,000 times. But here's what most people never noticed. The routine wasn't really about his feet, it was about his mind. Messi has spoken, rarely, about needing quiet before big matches. Not speeches, not hype music blasting in his ears. Silence, space to think. While some players need adrenaline to perform, Messi needed the opposite. A kind of stillness that let him see the game before it happened. This is the part nobody puts in the highlight reels. Before the genius, there's the discipline. Before the impossible dribble, there's a boy who did the same boring warm-up 10,000 times until his body didn't need to think about it anymore. And that's exactly why it worked. Because on the pitch, football happens too fast for conscious thought. There's no time to calculate an angle or plan 3 steps ahead. The players who succeed under that pressure aren't the ones thinking the fastest. They're the ones who've removed the need to think at all. Messi's rituals weren't superstition for luck. They were a way of freeing his mind from everything except the game in front of him. This is why, in the biggest finals, World Cup finals, Champions League finals, moments with an entire nation watching, Messi so often looked completely calm, not because the pressure wasn't real, it was enormous, but because his mind had already been trained, for years, to treat that pressure as just another normal day. Right boot first, same stretches, same silence, same walk onto the pitch he'd walked onto 1,000 times before. The chaos around him never changed, but he had built something inside himself that didn't move. And that's the real story behind the goals, the trophies, the moments that made him a legend. Not just raw ability, a quiet, introverted kid who understood something most people never learn, that greatness isn't born in the moment of glory. It's built, quietly, in all the moments nobody's watching. The world saw a genius scoring impossible goals under impossible pressure. What the world didn't see was the boy who spent years building the one thing that made all of it possible. A system so strong, so unshakable, that by the time the whole world was watching, he'd already made peace with the chaos long before kickoff. That's not talent. That's discipline nobody could see.